Till now, we have already discussed the nature of idealistic metaphysics, and from that, what kind of philosophy would we derive? We can go ahead. We can find the function what philosophy has to do from the idealistic perspective, and we will also talk about other perspectives. We haven't yet started the Hegelian philosophical system. We are still like a few sessions away from that. So we are still in that process of summing up everything we have done till now. From the idealistic perspective, they always talk about this holistic view. Holistic view. The whole is important than the part. So you can understand for them the very function of knowledge, the very function of philosophy is to explain the universe, to have an insight into the happening of the world. So you observe the universe, you observe the events in the world, and through that you would want to understand the whole universe. But they are not they are not alone. There are other people as well, and not everyone is an idealist. So there are other philosophers as well who would consider all this as rubbish. This is nonsense. For example, the analytic group, and we are going to take them once we finish with Hegel. Probably we are going to take them. So the school of Russell, Ayer, all of these people. So they would be the analytic philosophers. They consider this thing that the idealists are doing as nonsensical. In fact, the term they use would be it's nonsensical. Not in the sense as that the way we understand nonsense in our language, but as something which does not have a corresponding reality. Nonsense in that sense. But that we'll find when we will read them. For now, what are these people saying? The analytical philosophers would say that the world as a whole is not an object of scientific inquiry. You cannot do an inquiry within the system. You can do inquiry of something which is outside you, something you can work on. But you're part of the universe. So you cannot have a view of universe as a whole. You can have a view, but it would not be a scientific view. In fact, certain logical positivists would call it's just bad grammar. I will talk about that as well. So, uh, if you cannot talk about it as a whole, then obviously it cannot admit any explanation of the whole as well. Secondly, the analytic philosophers would say, what does it mean to explain something? What is an explanation? Explanation is nothing but a scientific explanation. And scientific explanations are predominantly causal explanations. And world as a whole, if that would have a cause, that would again become part of the world as a whole. Again, cannot be studied, world as a whole. So, another thing, the world consists of simple parts which we know through our perception or sensation of them. So, the sentient experience in the most indubitable way that may be described as the simple, which may be most nearly illustrated in the form of sense data. And that's all we can know. That's all we can know. This world of sense data. But then the idealists, they have their own point of view. They would not agree with all this. They would say that no, the subject matter of all knowledge, the subject matter of philosophy is world as a whole. But like Kant was he was also an idealist. And you would see again that you are not going to go beyond Kant. And they would agree that it's not a scientific inquiry. Okay, I got it. It's not an object of science. But then that wasn't its purpose as well. Philosophical wisdom, it comes in the form of attitude. So what of it? That is the question the philosopher wants to answer. You do not do philosophy for the sake of doing philosophy. No. It is to develop a worldview. It's to develop an attitude inside you. And regarding the world as the progressive revelation, the manifestation of some kind of whatever it is, some kind of eternal and timeless thing, which the later idealists would call the absolute spirit, the personalized spirit, जो हम देखेंगे आगे जाके. But something. So in this way, the idealists would say that this temporal existence that's around us, it is just an expression of the eternal, and we have to find that one explanation that explains all. But with this caveat that such an intuition, such a knowledge, this can never be a scientific knowledge. It cannot be scientific endeavor. And that's why all of these idealist scholars and the greats of the field, like Aristotle, Plato, Spinoza, even Hegel and Bradley, they would all consider philosophy as something distinct from special sciences. Now, the idealists also hold that the philosophical insight is gained when you kind of examine, or others would say meditate, but here we are talking about it strictly in the philosophical sense, by the act of reading into the events of the world, that what's happening around us, we can know this for sure, and from it we can have that philosophical insight into the world outside. And that's why experience is very relevant even in an idealistic philosophy. It's relevant for all philosophy in that sense. Whatever is your attitude towards the world, whatever it is, it has to be sustained through facts. And an idealist would not have problem with science as such. He would say, okay, if science is the thing that reveals facts, so be it. I don't have a problem with it. I'll take it. But these facts, what to do of these facts now? I have to explain these facts further. And what do I make of these facts? And how do they shape my attitude towards the world? And that's more important. Knowing the fact is not as much important. What of it is more important? Certain idealists like Bradley, they would maintain that we should have our starting point in something which is not corruptible, a primordial experience and uninterpreted uh, uh, experience, something not even polluted by thought, something not even polluted by philosophical view. But this is what we call the concept of fitra in Islam, something not polluted at all. You would get a glimpse of fitra, the way we understand in Islam, in extreme situations when humans are there in their most dire situations, or when they are in their purest forms. For example, if a person, if God forbid, he's about to see accident of a very loud one. Now, exaggerate it to its highest level, and that would be a mother who could never have a child and now has a child, and this child is about to meet an accident, and she sees it from a distance. She cannot do anything about it. Now, what are the thoughts that run inside her at that moment? Most often or not, it is seen that the cry humans give is towards God. In fact, the word we use sometimes for the situation is, oh my God. Like Shah Rukh Khan in that movie, दाएं मारेगी या बाएं मारेगी या खुदा ये तो सीधे मारेगी या खुदा. So that would be the fitra of humans. But for Bradley, it's not fitra, but he says we have to start from something which is not polluted at all. The starting point of philosophy has to be something, a kind of a blur, an unparted thing, not even disturbed by thought. So he would not even accept sensation or sense data as primordial. He would just treat it as an abstraction from the actual primordial experience. Another philosopher, who we need not go into details, he would say that the starting point of philosophizing is not any experience, but the most important and significant experience is being human itself. That's a very important point. Very, very important point. And by the end of this session, you would understand that why this modern phenomena of looking at everything from this perspective of logic and from the perspective of science is a problematic view of looking at life, because we are not essentially scientific species. We are not. Some of us do science. Most of us are, say, for example, we look at emotional side of things. Most of us, we have emotional sides. So, what's a better definition of humans? Humans are scientific animals, or humans are emotional animals? So he's saying that prior to everything is the experience of this being, this human being. So the discussion that we are entering into, that we were trying to, something that we were trying to forge was this, that being an idealist does not mean that you have denied, you disrespect all experience. They are just differing from the analytical philosopher in what? With regard to what kind of experience matters, what kind of experience is relevant for philosophy. Now you would understand that we are somehow going into this direction of science versus philosophy, and in a way into this realm of science versus religion. But let's see where we head. Let's talk about the standpoints of the two systems. For the idealist, the world has to be taken as one whole, and then all of our experience have to be studied, not piecemeal, but as a totalized whole. Now, the idealist understands that the world as a whole cannot be an object of pure observation. Now, you cannot experiment on the world as a whole. You can experiment on a very tiny part of it. So, if the definition of scientific inquiry is this, observation and experimentation, then it is true the scientific study of world as a whole is not feasible. But is scientific way the only way of looking at the world? Do we always look at world through this sense? When we are in the most intimate moments of our life, when we hold hands with a friend, or when we kiss our wife or her husband, depending upon man or woman, and similarly, when you look at a beautiful scenery out there, and when it's raining, and uh, or the other part of it which gives us grief, when you see a funeral, for example, when you see some kind of devastation, do you measure it in, say, for example, centimeters, kgs, that 5 kg of love today for you, or this was the angle he held my hand and it was like 23.5 degrees? So do we do it like that? So this is something you need to take home and think about. But an idealist would say, okay, I agree that if this is science, then our inquiry is not scientific. But then science is always going to be compartmental. It's always going to limit itself to these boxes. And then with the modern trend, you might not have been able to say it for the early scientists, but with the modern scientists, when the trend is going more and more towards specialization, you can see it now clearly. Now there is another element to it. No philosopher, no human being can claim knowledge of the whole world. But then what does an idealist mean when he says we have to know things as a whole? See, it can mean a few things. One, say for example, there is some underlying stuff. There is some kind of thing which is there, the sum total of all, or the कोई तो है जो निज़ाम हस्ती चला रहा है. Something which we might call even the essence, or a primordial entity, or a being which sums up or explains everything. And uh, by having an apprehension of this primary being, we might be able to explain things in general as they exist. Now, Aristotle would be one of the idealists whose view of the world is like this. So, we talked about his concept of form, the actus primus. So, It's that kind of idea. So when you want to know the world as a whole, you want to know this one principle. Another way of looking at it is something we call the root metaphor theory. Uh, you you can know certain things for sure. You can know a lot of things which are around you. True, we cannot have all the knowledge of all the fields of knowledge, but we can know one or more of these fields better than the rest. And the concepts that we draw from these fields of inquiry, which we understand, they may serve as key concepts for understanding the rest, which we do not understand so well. The way we did it like 5 minutes back when we were trying to answer the question on the hereafter. We do not understand it completely, but what we understand is that God says these things in Quran, and we extend those theses to the hereafter, and we try to understand it. So here, the key concepts of necessity, they have to be strained, stretched to cover facts belonging to fields which are far removed from the original field of study which we understand. Now, there are certain philosophers who take uh, who would consider this to mean the knowledge of whole. Spencer, Bergson, Whitehead, these would be the people. But then there is another way of looking at it. We can say that, okay, we would never be able to understand absolute reality the way Kant said. We would never be able to know it. But this knowledge gains in solidity with progress in knowledge of things in general. As we start unfolding things, maybe in 100 years we would have unfolded something more. In 200 years, we might have unfolded something more. We might have ventured into those levels. For example, you can see things in front of you, they're solid. The table, the phone you have in your hand, the book you have, these are solid things. But then when you go to the microscopic level, and there you see that it's something we cannot define as solid. There are these electrons which are particles, and that's why extended and mm, uh, a- and solid. I do not know the correct word, but okay, let's call it solid. But then the same electron is also a wave, so not a solid anymore. And then when you look at it, you go further down, and then you see that its solidity is made of certain quarks, and then you go again down, 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 and somewhere down the line you understand it's all space. Things coming out of nothing, going out of existence, coming into existence. So we do not know where we are heading. We might understand these things in, say, 100 years from now. We, for now, we can have certain glimpses of this reality. And in future as well, these glimpses are going to get clearer and clearer. This is the view of the philosophers we are trying to understand right now, Hegel and Bradley. For Hegel, a study of history that would tell us how the absolute has revealed himself. That would give us an intuition into the nature of this absolute whole. This intuition would reveal that the unfoldment of absolute is dialectic. The philosophy of Hegel is dialectic. And that's extended by Karl Marx to dialectic materialism. So, how do we know that the march of the universe is dialectic? Hegel would say, when you understand the history of unfoldment, there is thesis, there is antithesis, there is synthesis. The synthesis becomes the new thesis, then it's antithesis, then again, and there is. We reach this level of reason where we understand this much. Now, in 500 years, there would be further developments. Similarly, for Bradley, we know only this much, that the absolute is all inclusive, all harmonious, sentient experience. We cannot go further into detail. But it's always a progress. Whichever be the view of the absolute reality out of these three. For the idealist, our quest is for the total reality. And for the idealist, if it is not the study of total reality, it is no philosophical quest at all. And this quest, this appears to be what's the need of this quest? For intellectual satisfaction. That's what makes us human. If you cannot avoid it, you just want to do it. There is something inside you which wants this rational illumination. For Bradley, the quest aims at the satisfaction of being human, the satisfaction of all sides and aspects of humans. Hegel calls it rational satisfaction. And in that sense, you would now be able to understand that it does not mean purely something limited to intellectual processes. It's not that. For Hegel, philosophical revelation comes only after we have reflected on all the events that have ever taken place. By means of all comprehensive retrospect, we understand the ways in which the absolute revealed itself in the course of world events. And unless this retrospective deliberation is sure, certain, unless it gives us sure, certain, and satisfying illumination, our grasp would not be satisfactory. Now, this sure and certain, what does it mean? It means that it should follow the way conclusion follows from the premises. Like the apprehension of parts follows from the nature of the whole. So the world event should follow from our understanding of the absolute. Once we understand the absolute, you should be able to explain what's happening around the world. Now, religion in a way does this. And uh, one of the arguments I make, for example, for Islam is that it's the most beautiful story ever told. It's a story that makes sense of our universe. All religions do it. I do not want to deny any other religion that they don't try to do it or all. But my personal feeling, and I think that the one that touches it as a whole, Islam would be it. But then there are people who think there are other traditions, and there are also people who think all the traditions are able to do it. The perennialists, they would say that Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, all of them do it. And there are others within the traditions who think that only theirs is able to do it. So once you understand the absolute, you would be able to make sense of the individual events that have taken place. So this understanding has its reference to the general modes or manner in which the world events take place. By knowing a particular triad in this in a certain sector of life, uh, we get the idea of what happened around that time. Philosophy is thus concerned with knowledge in general. Science would be a contrast. It deals with knowledge in its individual sense. It deals with events in their individuality. Philosophy deals with events in their generality. And this is what Aristotle, in his statement that philosophy is the science of first principles, this is what he meant. And if we keep this in mind, then we should not make any predicative use of all of this idealistic philosophy. Predicative, we should not predict anything future, anything of the future through it, that this is what it is going to happen. No, this philosophy is based on what has happened, post-dictive. It's not to be interpreted like a scientific law. No, it doesn't do that. It is post-dictive. It explains, it throws light on what has happened behind us, what has happened in the past. Why did it happen the way it happened? It is that kind of illumination. It's not a mystical term, this illumination which we talk about, this scientific intuition that a philosopher has. In in any inquiry, there are roughly 4 stages. Now, let's talk about a scientific inquiry. There would be 4 stages. Like, you collect data. Collection of data would mean that you observe. There are facts lying on the table in front of you. I see this apple fallen. This is collection of data. And then you form a hypothesis. Okay, why is it happening? You try to explain it in a million ways, whatever. Newton explained it in a particular way. Others would have done it in another way. So you have facts in front of you, you try to explain it, you hypothesize. Then there is something called illumination, which we will try to understand what is that. And then finally verification. Okay, I think it is this. If this is it, I'll run through certain experiments and I'll try to observe. And if my hypothesis is verified, we would consider it to be a scientifically accepted theory. So these four stages. Now this third stage, this illumination, it is here where the scientist feels that he has discovered what he wanted to know. This is like a hunch, a creative synthesis that's happening inside him, a certain flash of the truth, that eureka moment. I found it. That aha experience. Oh, this is the case. And it's happening inside him because all he has is facts on the table. He has these finches in front of himself in Galapagos. He's in his ship HFS Beagle and he's observing these finches with different beaks and what to do with these different beaks. And he's thinking. And then all of a sudden he's, aha, I found it. Eureka. What have I found? I found that this is adaptation. They're adapting to different uh, this uh, their environment, and there would be certain species which would be fittest, and the fittest would survive because nature would select, and the selection of the fittest, this leads to evolution of species. Oh, I just found the origin of species. So that eureka moment. How do you find how much gold is there in this uh, whatever ornament? So you have that eureka moment. You all you have is facts. That moment is illumination. And for a scientist, you would understand the ones you know as famous ones. Einstein had what in front of him? That there is this particular thing, solid, semiconductor. Sunlight falls on it, electrons are released from it, and we have electricity. Now, how does it happen? These are his facts. All of these are his facts. They are in front of you, they are in front of everyone, they are in front of Albert Einstein. Now, he has this aha moment. Oh, quantum mechanical model. Light is also quantified. A, a quantum of light strikes an atom, imparts energy into it. The electron gets released from its bonds. Photoelectric effect wins him the Nobel Prize. That moment. So, for a scientist, this is the most important stage. But unless this result of certain flash is verified by means of a lab test, it is not considered important for scientific purposes. And that's why scientists have falsification tests. The theory is something which is not capable of being falsified, it would not be accepted. But what about philosophers, poets, artists, lovers, us, humans, the general masses, the ones who live their lives as sons or fathers or daughters and mothers and husbands and wives, the average human being? What about us? What about the philosopher? No verification is possible. No amount of experimentation can prove your mother's love to you. Never. It's not possible. Looking at the world as a whole, you might have a hypothesis of it. You might have that eureka moment illumination, which we call tajalli and kashf in Islam. You can have that, but can you verify it? You cannot. Because the absolute reality does not admit of being confined or confirmed by any series of tests. It just cannot. So, why then do all this? The purpose to get an insight into all these is to find meaning in our lives, to get a hang of events as they are happening around us, to understand why are they happening the way they are happening. The meaning or ideals of life are posited by the free decision of man in the light of data collected pertaining to the total field of experience, but any free decision is always open to fresh negotiation. We can protest against it, we can disprove it, but again, we might end up confirming it. Newer facts are uncovered, new accumulation takes place, new patterns develop, new understandings develop, old facts are reinterpreted in favor or against by a new decision of man. And hence, a philosopher, he is guided more by conviction than by the truth of these facts. Because he stops at the eureka moment. The subjective certainty born of creative joy is the mastering key for the evaluation of any philosophy. Philosophical explanation has to be understood as an illumination. It's an illumination concerning the total experience of man, which includes definitely the scientific experience as well, but not only this. You do not have an eureka only in scientific explanations. You have an eureka when you meet that man finally. Oh, I have been searching for you my entire life. I finally found you. Oh, I wanted to listen to this thing. I could never make sense of it. But now that I have listened and I make sense of it. That thing. These would include experiences of not just scientific realm, the experiences of moral realm, the social realm, the logical realm, and on and on and on and on. And all of this in total make us humans. Science is a part of it. And that which appeals to whole man, if it is not just scientific, if it is moral, social, logical, and all of these things taken together, if this is what appeals to the whole man, how can it be called irrational or non rational or anti rational? It is the most rational reconstruction of experience. When you limit it to only the moral, only the social, only the scientific, only the logical, that would be something irrational. But what appeals to us as we are, that is humans, that would be the most rational explanation of things as they are. Philosophy then is akin to poetry. It is like a religion then, where illumination is brought through logical skill, not through a mystical art. Where illumination is brought through masterful marshalling of facts in favor of a certain point of view, not through a divinely revealed text, not through a human incarnate of God. No. Philosophy would want this illumination through facts, through rational, through logic. In this sense, philosophical explanation of the world has to be understood. The idealist hence protests against any other explanation of philosophy. And Hegel would even protest if you consider philosophy to be scientific. No, it's not, he would say. I think we'll stop here. I think we had a fine session today. Thank you so much for being here, every one of you.